In 1931, a Nebraska farmer could keep 40 acres running on tools that cost him almost nothing. No tractor payment, no hardware store, just knowledge passed down through calloused hands. Today we call it homesteading and pay thousands for the privilege. But here's the twist. Number 9 on this list was so effective that agricultural colleges quietly rediscovered it in the 1990s and slapped a fancy name on it. And number 3 kept food from spoiling for months without a single watt of electricity. These 25 tricks were not hobbies, they were survival. And when cheap equipment and store credit arrived, we forgot them almost overnight. Before we start, hit that subscribe button, because some of these might save you real money this year. Let us count down the 25 smartest poor man farm tricks that kept old homesteads running. Number 25, wood ash from the stove. Every homestead had a bucket of it by the back door, and nothing got wasted. Your grandfather scattered wood ash around the base of cabbages and onions, and the slugs that chewed through a garden overnight simply would not cross it. The fine gray powder scratched their soft bodies and dried them out. But ash did more than guard the rows. Spread thin across the soil, it fed the ground potassium and sweetened dirt gone sour from too much rain. A cord of firewood already burned for heat, so the ash cost nothing at all. Old-timers knew to keep it dry in a covered pail because wet ash lost its bite. Modern gardeners buy bags of potash and slug pellets from the co-op, never realizing the same thing sat in their firebox every single winter morning. Number 24, the manure hotbed. Before anyone dreamed of a heated greenhouse, homesteaders got a jump on spring with nothing but fresh horse manure and a wooden frame. Your great-grandmother dug a pit, packed it 2 feet deep with steaming manure, then covered it with a few inches of good soil. As the manure rotted, it threw off a steady heat, sometimes reaching 90 degrees down in the pile. Seedlings started 6 weeks early in that warm bed, while snow still clung to the fence posts. An old window sash laid on top trapped the sun by day. This was free heat, generated by decay, in an age with no thermostats. Market gardeners near the cities used hotbeds to sell tender lettuce in March for a premium. We spend hundreds on seedling heat mats now, forgetting the barn produced all the warmth a garden ever needed. Number 23, comfrey by the barn door. Nearly every old farmstead had a patch of this broad-leaved plant growing where the animals could not reach it, and it earned its keep. 3 ways. Your grandmother cut armloads of comfrey and piled it around tomato plants as a mulch that broke down into rich, dark feed for the roots. The plant pulled minerals up from deep in the subsoil with roots that ran 10 feet down, then handed them back when the leaves rotted. She also wilted the leaves and fed them to the hogs and hens. And when a child skinned a knee, the same plant went into a poultice. One clump, planted once, came back every year for a lifetime, spreading a little wider each season. Nurseries sell liquid plant tonic by the bottle today. The old-timers grew their fertilizer factory in a corner of the yard. Number 22, the rain barrel under every eave. Long before anyone paid a water bill, homesteaders caught the sky. Wooden barrels sat beneath the corners of the roof, and a good summer storm filled them in minutes off the wide barn tin. That soft rainwater was gold. It had no lime, no chlorine, nothing that crusted a kettle or stunted a seedling. Your grandmother watered the garden with it, washed her hair in it, and topped off the animal's trough when the well ran low in August. A single inch of rain on a barn roof could yield hundreds of gallons pouring off the edge. The barrels cost $1 or $2 secondhand and lasted years if kept in the shade. Cities now sell rain barrels back to us as green living. The homestead simply refused to let free water run off into the ditch. Number 21. The root cellar dug into the hill. This was the refrigerator, the pantry, and the insurance policy all in one, and it ran on dirt alone. Your family carved a room into the north side of a slope, walled it with stone, and covered it with earth thick enough that the temperature never moved much off 50 degrees, winter or summer. Down in that cool dark, potatoes kept until spring. Apples stayed crisp past Christmas, and cabbages hung by their roots for months. Carrots buried in damp sand came out sweet in February. A good cellar meant a family ate from its own ground long after the last frost killed the garden. It cost only labor and a few loads of stone. We plug in second freezers now and pay the electric company all winter, but the hillside kept food for free and never once lost power in a storm. Number 20. The spring house over running water. First pattern break. Here is where the old-timers outsmarted us completely. On any homestead lucky enough to have a spring, they built a little stone house right over the flowing water, and that cold current did the work of an icebox. Your great-grandmother set crocks of milk and butter down in the shallow channel, and the water, straight from underground at a steady chill, kept the cream from souring even in July heat. Wide slate shelves held cheese and eggs above the flow. The constant trickle carried away warmth as fast as it built up. Butter churned in the morning stayed firm until supper. This cost nothing to run because the water never stopped moving and never sent a bill. When rural electricity arrived in the 1930s, the spring houses fell silent. But a well-built one kept food colder in the dead of summer than many an early refrigerator ever managed. Number 19. Corn cobs saved for everything. Nothing on an old farm was as humble or as useful as the leftover cob after the kernels came off. Your grandfather dried them by the bushel and burned them in the cook stove, where they caught fast and threw a quick, hot flame perfect for firing up breakfast. Cobs went into the smokehouse, too, where they smoldered low and lent a sweet flavor to hanging hams. Ground fine, they scoured the grease off cast iron. Whole, they stoppered jugs and started the outhouse fire. Even the pigs got the softest ones. A cob was a byproduct of feeding the whole farm corn, so it was free by the ton. We buy fire starters and specialty smoking chips at the store now. The homestead looked at a pile of cobs and saw fuel, flavor, and a scrub brush all in one. Number 18. Bone meal from the butchering. When a hog or steer was slaughtered, the old-timers wasted nothing, and the bones held a secret the garden craved. Your family saved every bone, roasted them in the cook stove until brittle, then pounded them to a coarse powder in a sack with the flat of an axe. That bone meal, worked into the soil around the fruit trees and the root crops, fed slow, steady phosphorus that built strong roots and heavy blossoms. Unlike quick fertilizers that washed away in the first rain, ground bone released over whole seasons. A single butchering supplied enough for the entire orchard. It cost only the effort of the grinding. Garden centers sell bone meal in paper bags today at a fair markup. The homestead pulled the same nutrient from the Sunday roast and the winter hog, and never let a single bone reach the trash heap. Number 17. Water glass for the egg glut. Hens lay hard in spring and summer, then nearly stop in the cold months, so the old-timers found a way to bank the surplus. Your grandmother filled a stone crock with a solution of water glass, a cheap liquid mineral, and lowered fresh, unwashed eggs down into it. The liquid sealed every pore in the shell, locking out air, and those eggs kept good for 8 or 9 months without a lick of refrigeration. Come January, when the hens sulked, she reached into the crock and pulled out eggs that fried up fine. A gallon of the solution cost pennies and preserved dozens of dozens. This trick showed up in farm bulletins right through the 1940s. We buy eggs year-round at flat prices now, so the crock disappeared. But on a homestead that lived by its own hens, water glass turned summer's glut into winter's breakfast. Number 16, salt pork in the barrel. Second pattern break. This one fed families through winters that would starve us today. Before freezers, a homestead butchered in late fall when the weather turned cold enough to work the meat safely, and the whole hog went into a wooden barrel of salt. Your great-grandfather packed layer after layer of pork between heavy handfuls of coarse salt, and that salt drew out every drop of moisture the bacteria needed to spoil it. Sealed tight in the brine, the meat kept for a year or longer with no ice, no cellar, no machine. A slab pulled from the barrel and soaked overnight fed a family of 8. Salt was one of the few things a homestead had to buy, but a barrel's worth cost little and preserved an entire animal. We call salt-cured meat a delicacy now and pay a premium. The old-timers called it Tuesday, and it kept them alive. Number 15, the smokehouse out back. Alongside the salt barrel stood the little windowless shed that turned fresh meat into food that lasted. Your family hung hams, bacon, and sausage from the rafters, then kept a low, cool fire of hardwood and corn cobs smoldering below for days. The smoke did 2 things at once. It dried the meat slowly, and it coated every surface with compounds that stopped mold and rot cold. A properly smoked ham hung in the rafters clear through summer and only got better. The fire never blazed. It just whispered, tended morning and night by whoever passed by. The wood came off the farm for free. This was preservation and flavor in a single patient process. Grocery stores sell smoked meat by the pound today, most of it flavored with liquid smoke and never near a fire. The homestead smokehouse did the real thing with 3 sticks and time. Number 14, Lye soap from ash and grease. Here is a trick where the homestead made something from 2 things everyone else threw out. Your grandmother saved wood ashes all winter and dripped rainwater slowly through them in a barrel, catching the dark liquid that ran out the bottom. That was lye, strong enough to float an egg. She boiled it with the fat and grease saved from every butchering and every skillet, and the 2 reacted into hard, honest soap. One batch scrubbed clothes, floors, dishes, and children for months. The whole thing cost nothing but the labor, made entirely from kitchen waste and stove sweepings. It took skill, because too much lye burned the skin and too little left the soap soft. Farm women traded the recipe like currency. We buy soap in plastic bottles now without a thought. The homestead conjured it out of the fireplace and the frying pan. Number 13, tallow candles and lamps. When the sun went down on an old farm, the light came straight from the animals they raised. Your family rendered beef and mutton fat down into clean white tallow, then dipped cotton wicks again and again until each one grew into a candle thick enough to burn for hours. The same tallow filled small lamps with a floating wick for close work by the fire. It was not bright by our standards, but it stretched the working day into the dark months and cost nothing beyond the fat already on hand. A single butchered steer yielded enough tallow to light a cabin for a good long while. Kerosene later pushed the tallow candle aside, and the electric bulb finished the job. But in a farmhouse miles from any store, light itself came off the very animals in the barn, dipped and cooled on the kitchen table. Number 12. Feeding the whey and buttermilk to the hogs. Nothing showed the old-timers' thrift like the way one animal's leftovers fattened another. Every time your grandmother made butter or cheese, she was left with buckets of buttermilk and whey, thin and sour and useless to keep. So it went straight to the hog pen. The pigs drank it down eagerly, and that milky slop, rich in protein the dairy had left behind, put weight on them faster than grain alone. A homestead that milked a cow essentially got free hog feed as a side effect of making its own butter. Nothing was purchased. Nothing was wasted. The cow fed the family and the family's pork at the same time. Farmers now pay for bagged feed and pour the whey down the drain. The homestead ran a closed loop where the dairy quietly fattened the meat, turning one animal's scraps into another's supper. Number 11. The Three Sisters Planting. Third pattern break. This one was old before the homesteaders ever learned it, borrowed from native farmers who had perfected it over centuries. Your family planted corn, beans, and squash together in the same mound, and each crop did a job for the others. The tall corn gave the beans a pole to climb. The beans pulled nitrogen from the air and fed it into the soil, feeding the hungry corn in return. And the broad squash leaves sprawled across the ground below, shading out weeds and holding moisture in the dirt. 3 crops grew in the space of one, guarding and feeding each other with no store-bought fertilizer and almost no weeding. The whole system cost a handful of saved seed. Agricultural science now writes papers on companion planting as though it were a discovery. The homestead grew its dinner in a living partnership that fed itself. Number 10. Cover crops turned under. The old-timers understood that a field left bare all winter was a field going backward, so they never let the ground sit naked. After the harvest, your grandfather scattered rye or clover across the emptied rows, and it grew a thick green blanket through the cold months. Come spring, before it went to seed, he plowed the whole living carpet back under. As it rotted, that green manure fed the soil nitrogen and rich organic matter, and its roots had held the dirt against the winter rains that would have washed it into the creek. The seed cost little, and the field came back stronger every year instead of wearing out. This is why old farms stayed fertile for generations. Modern operations lean on bagged nitrogen and watch their topsoil blow away. The homestead grew its own fertilizer right in place and turned it under for free. Number 9. Hugelkultur before it had a name. Here is the trick agricultural writers rediscovered in the 1990s and gave a hard-to-pronounce label. Your great-grandfather did it because he had rotting logs and stumps he could not easily haul off. He buried them in a long mound, piled soil and manure on top, and planted right over the whole thing. As the wood broke down underground, it worked like a sponge, soaking up rain and releasing it slowly through dry spells, so the bed rarely needed watering. The decaying logs threw off gentle heat and a steady trickle of nutrients for years. A mound built once kept producing for a decade with almost no tending. The homestead turned a pile of useless deadfall into the richest, most drought-proof bed on the place. We buy raised bed kits and soaker hoses today. The old-timers buried a log and let it do both jobs for free. Number 8. The living fence of hedgerows. Barbed wire cost money and posts rotted, so the cleverest homesteads grew their fences instead of buying them. Your family planted thorny hawthorn or Osage orange in a tight row then wove and bent the young saplings partway through as they grew, laying them into a dense, living barrier. Within a few years, it grew thick enough to turn back cattle and hogs, and it never needed replacing because it healed and grew stronger each season. The hedge also gave nesting birds a home and broke the wind that would have dried out the fields. It cost only cuttings and patience. A well-laid hedgerow stood for 100 years. We string wire and reset posts every decade now. The homestead planted a fence that mended itself, sheltered the crops, and grew taller and tougher with every passing year instead of falling down. Number 7, the scythe and the whetstone. Before there was money for a mower, one sharp blade and a strong back brought in the whole hay crop. Your grandfather swung a scythe through the tall grass in long, even strokes, and a skilled man could lay down an acre in a morning without burning a drop of fuel. The secret was the edge. He carried a whetstone in his back pocket and touched up the blade every few minutes, keeping it keen enough to slice clean rather than tear. A good scythe cost a few dollars and lasted a lifetime with care. It never broke down, never needed parts, and ran on breakfast alone. Cutting hay by hand sounds impossibly hard to us now, but the rhythm was steady and the tool was silent. The homestead mowed its meadows with a curved blade and a stone, and the only sound was the hiss of grass falling. Number 6, banking the house with earth and leaves. When winter bore down, the old-timers insulated their homes with whatever the land gave them for free. Your family raked huge piles of fallen leaves, or forked up manure and straw, and heaped it against the foundation of the house clear up to the windowsills. That thick blanket of packed leaves stopped the cold from creeping up through the floorboards and cut the wind that stole heat from the lower walls. Some banked the north side with corn stalks or spruce boughs laid tight. It made a real difference in a drafty cabin, and it cost nothing but an afternoon's raking. Come spring, the rotted leaves and manure went straight onto the garden. We buy foam board and weather stripping now. The homestead wrapped its own walls in the season's fallen leaves, staying warmer all winter and building next year's compost at the very same time. Number 5, the broody hen as free incubator. 4th pattern break. This one still beats the machine we replaced it with. When a hen went broody in spring, refusing to leave the nest and puffing up angry at anyone who came near, the old-timers did not fight it. They used it. Your grandmother slipped a dozen good eggs under that determined hen, and for 3 weeks, the bird did everything a costly incubator does, only better. She turned each egg with her beak, held them at the perfect warmth against her body, and kept the humidity just right without a single dial to set. When the chicks hatched, she raised them too, teaching them to scratch and hiding them under her wings from the hawk. It cost nothing and never lost a clutch to a power outage. We buy electric incubators and brooder lamps today. The homestead had a machine that ran on chicken feed and knew its job by instinct. Number 4, cheese and butter aging in the cave. Long before anyone owned a second fridge, homesteads that made their own dairy needed somewhere cool and steady to let it age, and they found it underground. Your family set wheels of hard cheese on wooden shelves down in the cellar, or a dugout cave, where the temperature held even and the air stayed damp. In that quiet dark, a fresh cheese slowly firmed and sharpened over months into something that would keep for a year. The cool earth did the work a costly cave-aged label charges dearly for now. Butter pressed into crocks and lowered into the same space stayed sweet far longer than it had any right to. It cost only the digging. This is how a homestead turned a summer of extra milk into food that lasted through the barren winter, aged to richness by nothing but the steady cool of the ground itself. Number 3, sand and sawdust for winter storage. Here is the trick that kept vegetables crisp for months with no electricity at all. Your grandmother did not just pile carrots and beets in the cellar loose, where they would shrivel and go soft. She layered them in wooden boxes packed with damp sand or clean sawdust, each root tucked in so it did not touch the next. The sand held just enough moisture to keep the vegetables plump and just enough dryness to stop them rotting, and it locked out the air that would have spoiled them. Buried that way, carrots came out in March as firm as the day they were pulled. Beets, turnips, and parsnips kept the same. The sand cost nothing from any creek bank, and the boxes lasted years. We tossed vegetables in the crisper drawer and watched them wilt in a week. The homestead kept a full root harvest, fresh clear, until spring in a box of dirt. Number 2, ashes and lime in the outhouse and barn. It sounds like the lowliest job on the farm, but the old-timers turned waste into the richest fertilizer they had. Your grandfather kept a bucket of wood ash and slaked lime by the outhouse and the barn gutter, and a scoop tossed in after each use killed the smell and stopped the flies cold. But the real genius came later. That treated waste, aged in a pile through a full year until it was safe and sweet, broke down into dark, powerful compost that grew the tallest corn on the place. Nothing was flushed away or hauled off. Every bit of it circled back to feed the ground that fed the family. It cost only a handful of ash. We pay for sewer and buy fertilizer in the same season now. The homestead closed the oldest loop of all, turning what everyone else discarded into next year's harvest. And finally, number 1, saving the seed. This was the trick that made every other one possible, the quiet act that kept a homestead free. Each fall, your family did not eat the best of the harvest. They saved it. Your grandmother chose the finest tomatoes, the biggest beans, the sturdiest ears of corn from the plants that had thrived in that exact soil, and she dried and stored their seed for spring. Year after year, those seeds grew tougher and better, suited to the farm's own weather and ground, until the family had a strain that belonged to them alone. It cost nothing, and it meant they never had to buy seed or ask anyone's permission to plant. A jar of saved seed was independence itself. We order fresh packets every spring now, many of them bred so their seed grows nothing at all. The homestead held its future in a handful of dried beans and planted the same free harvest every single year. That is the real lesson hiding in all the 25. These were not quaint hobbies. They were a whole way of living where the ash fed the garden fed the family, and the family's leftovers fed the animals that started it all over again. Nothing was bought that could be made, and nothing was thrown away that could be used. So here is my challenge. Try just one this year. Save your wood ash, pack your carrots in sand, or slip a dozen eggs under a broody hen. Then come back and tell me if the old-timers were just getting by, or if they knew something we paid a fortune to forget. Because your grandfather knew, now you know too.